In the most feel-good story of the night, new statistics compiled from the FBI show an 11% increase in murders since last...
Because they're already having a hard enough time dealing with actual criminals breaking the law, and when they do something wrong, they're being held to a higher standard. So now you have people who, I was profiled against it. So I say, you know what?
Laura, this kind of keeps playing into the same old thing. Here and I are talking about this in the green room about how...
People's impressions of different populations in the U.S. are heavily based off of what they see in the news and in media. The goal of any news outlet should be to equally and realistically portray each population. But that hasn't been the case. Although they are slowly catching up to real life, we still have a long ways to go until the real facts and truth of stories are shared. The Washington Post ran a study on 3 national news magazines, Newsweek, Time, and U.S. News and World Report. The focus of the study was on how immigration was portrayed in news from 2000 to 2010. They analyzed the images and context from thousands of articles and concluded that a majority of stories run were focused on the criminality of immigrants, when that in fact is not the case. For instance, while less than 25% of immigrants in the US are unauthorized, 54% of the images that they analyzed portrayed undocumented immigrants. Compared with nearly all racial and ethnic groups, male immigrants were pictured more often than female. This gap was largest among images of Latino immigrants, which showed only 21.5% women, where in reality, 49% of Latino immigrants were women as of 2010. Additionally, media portrayals of immigrants similarly highlighted Latino men. Only 50% of the immigrants to the US were Latino descent in 2005. Approximately 75% of those in the images that were analyzed were identified as Latino. In 2015, a study was done in Orange County, California, focusing on how authority was portrayed in news. Latinos were less likely to be portrayed as officers on television news than to be employed as officers in Los Angeles and Orange counties. Blacks comprised 9% of the officers portrayed on television news and 12% of those employed as officers, according to county records. Whites were more likely to be depicted as homicide victims on local television news than to be victimized by homicide in reality. And Asians were more likely to be portrayed as homicide victims on television news than to be victimized in reality, according to crime reports. Not only are the Latino and Black populations portrayed negatively in terms of crime and authority, but they are also labeled with stamps of poverty. In the US, Black families represent 49% of the poor in the media, but make up just 27% of the poor in the general population. White families, on the other hand, represent 17% of the poor in media, but make up 66% of the poor across the country. This is despite the fact that white working families are the biggest beneficiaries of welfare. In 2014, government assistance and tax credits lifted 6.2 million working-class whites out of poverty, more than any other racial group. The workforces of those newsrooms are also lacking in diversity. 58.3% of the workforce in newsroom are men, 77.4% of which are white. Women comprise just 41.7% of the overall workforce, and people of color make up only 22.6%. Additionally, there are no significant rise in the number of female tech workers and Black tech workers over the last decade since 2009.